electrodes to start is up. I do have a battery icon in the upper right, however it is gray with a question mark inside.
Okay, Christina, thanks. Yeah, that just gives us that confirmation that it's not connected to the ECG. Let's go ahead and continue with that Bluetooth troubleshooting steps for getting and reconnecting.
You're getting a live view inside the Orion spacecraft during some general daily activities that the crew is conducting. You heard communications with Christina Hansen. Christina calling down to Chris Birch here, our Capcom in Mission Control Houston. She continues to troubleshoot the ECG device that they are testing out. In the foreground, in the blue shirt, Commander Reed Wiseman, and next to him in the black shirt, Canadian Space Agency astronaut and mission specialist Jeremy Hansen. In the background, you're getting a look at NASA astronaut Victor Glover, pilot for the Artemis II mission, preparing to exercise. And what he is using is the flywheel device. We've discussed this a few times. This is
Houston, integrity for ECG. No joy seeing the device in the list of available devices when I attempt to repair it after doing the Bluetooth forget.
Okay, Christina, unfortunately, we are out of ideas at the moment. We're going to do some more thinking. We really appreciate all of your troubleshooting steps and actions you've taken. Great data for us, but we'll move on from this activity for the day. Thank you.
Copy all. I will keep the medical tablet charging and restow everything. Thanks for the help.
Copy all.
Again, those calls from Christina down to the ground as she troubleshoots that ECG device, the BME, or biomedical engineer, here in Mission Control Houston, working with their teams to continue developing procedures to help the crew troubleshoot. Back inside Orion, Victor Glover is in his timelined exercise for the day. On the flywheel device, this is a small device installed directly below the side hatch, so if you look above where his feet are, that is the side hatch of Orion. The flywheel is a cable-based device, so you can use it for either aerobic exercises like rowing or resistance workouts like squats and deadlifts, and today Glover is timelined to do resistive workouts. It can max out at 400 pounds of resistance. This view really gives a great look inside Orion and at the size and space available. Again, you're looking at 330 cubic feet habitable volume, so about the size of 2 minivans inside. The crew obviously did not launch in Orion in this configuration. They have since been able to stow quite a lot of the hardware that was used during the launch portion. That gives them more space to move about the cabin. As pilot Victor Glover continues exercising using the flywheel device, this is something that we learned early on during our spaceflight history would be critical for astronauts living and working in space for longer periods of time. On the International Space Station, astronauts are timelined to work out for approximately 2 hours a day to help maintain their bone and muscle health. On Orion, they're timelined to exercise for 30 minutes a day. Not only does this exercise help benefit the crew members and keep them strong, but it also helps inform how we treat things like osteoporosis on Earth. This is Artemis Mission Control, the spacecraft traveling 3,400 miles per hour, now over 118,000 miles away from Earth and 148,000 miles away from the Moon. You can track those stats for yourself anytime at nasa.gov/trackartemis. We also got some beautiful images from the crew this morning. Their first look back at Earth after the translunar injection burn. You can also see those images as well as the ones we intend to release as they come down on NASA's social media accounts at NASA and at NASA Artemis. In this live view from inside the Orion capsule, you can see Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen there in the black t-shirt. Looks like he is unpacking some of the crew's meals ahead of their midday meal coming up. We talked through some of their lunch options for today: beef stew, roasted turkey, cauliflower and cheese, cherry blueberry cobbler, butternut squash, roasted turkey again, cheese tortellini, vanilla pudding, and the most appetizing chocolate pudding cake. And if you're a sauce fan like me, you'll like to know there is maple syrup, chocolate spread, peanut butter, hot sauce, spicy mustard, strawberry jam, honey, cinnamon, and almond butter, all flying around the moon as well. If you look closely at Canadian space astronaut Jeremy Hansen, it appears that he is wearing two watches, but one of those is Archer. Artemis II astronauts wear wristband devices that continuously monitor their movement and their sleep throughout the mission. This data is going to be used for real-time health monitoring and safety assessments. And what they've completed pre-flight and will complete in post-flight evaluations help us get deeper insights into their cognition and behavior, their teamwork, of course, and their sleep quality in the deep space environment and inside Orion. Archer stands for Artemis Research for Crew Health and Readiness. And everything we learn from this test flight helps us prepare for future mission planning and crew support systems.
Use and integrity exercise complete. Thank you.
Thanks, integrity. We copy.
As you heard the call from pilot Victor Glover, he has completed exercise and was very kind enough to give us a view inside the cabin while he was exercising. We previously have seen the views from outside the cabin while the crew is exercising and how that imparts movement on the spacecraft. Now the crew is getting into their midday meal. Again, we were expecting to have a burn in 10 minutes, so if you are tuned in and looking for the outbound trajectory correction burn, that has been canceled for today. It was deemed unnecessary because our targeting was so accurate for the translunar injection burn. Again, that translunar injection burn came last night at 6:49 p.m. Central Time, 5 minutes and 50 seconds, using the Orbital Maneuvering Systems engine on the Orion spacecraft. And when you hear the crew call down and discuss their PCDs, that portable computing device, it's exactly what you see Hansen and Glover using right now, those tablets that allow them to track what they've been up to in the spacecraft, monitor their timelines, and communicate through email.
Houston Integrity AGA readings when ready.
All right, we'll take them.
CO2 1.0, O2 20.1, temperature 75.7, cabin pressure 14.2 psi.
Copy all, and we believe we copied CO2 1.0. Just want to confirm.
One decimal zero, 1.0, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And a question, do you guys always want these called down, or is a crew note enough?
And our preference is call down. Just helps us keep in sync with you guys real time.
Copy.
With the completion of this block of exercise for today, Glover calling down readings from the AGA, the Anomaly Gas Analyzer. those readings are requested before and after exercise, so they leave the device on throughout the time period that they are using that flywheel device. This helps teams on the ground monitor what the levels in the cabin are for the various molecules that Glover called out, and those are reported in parts per million. And we have just passed 2 days mission elapsed time. 2 days since the launch of Orion, atop the Space Launch System spacecraft from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, a very smooth ride uphill. We are now 3 days and 19 minutes away from the opening of our lunar flyby, targeted for flight day 6, when the crew will fly around the moon the first time in over 50 years for humans to do so. This is Artemis Mission Control, 2 days and 14 minutes mission elapsed time for the first flight of humans aboard Orion. And I am joined here by Paul Boehm, Orion Crew Support and Thermal Systems Manager. Thank you for joining us, Paul.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Leah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about your role. You just came from the Orion Mission Evaluation Room, is that right?
Yeah, actually, I just did. I was just checking our systems to see how things were going, and I am really pleased. So my role is I manage the hardware related to crew and all the crew systems on the vehicle, the ECLA system, the thermal systems, the suits, the flight crew equipment that are on the vehicle, and so been doing that for almost 14 years now.
Wow, that's impressive. And when we're talking about the ECLA system, that stands for Environmental Control and Life Support System. So what all makes up ECLAS?
ECLAS, yes. The biggest thing everybody thinks about for ECLAS is the life support system, the pressurization system, the air revitalization system that we have, and then the other parts of it that are also part of it is the thermal aspect of it, where we're cooling the air to be able to keep the crew temperature down exactly where they want it to be comfortable in the cabin, and so that is also part of our system as well.
Yeah, we heard them make some calls a couple days ago about being a little chilly, and your team is the one that works on making sure they're comfortable?
Yes, we've been working that the last couple of days, trying some adjustments. It's one of the things I will stress with the new vehicle. We are learning every single day that we're flying this vehicle right now, especially with the crew in it. We flew Artemis 1. We learned some things about the systems there, but now we have the crew involved, which adds a whole new dynamic to the vehicle, and that is what is really what we're looking at today, and learning how to interact with the crew and adjust things as we need to make the crew comfortable.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you also work with the food systems a little bit as well. So they're actually getting ready for a midday meal. We've been fortunate enough to have in-cabin views for some of today, and we saw them getting out some of their food. So can you tell us about the food warmer?
Yeah, the food system is, the crew is, a lot of the food that we use is very similar to what they fly on ISS. It's the rehydratable food, and what we use on Orion, we have what we call a food warmer. It's about a little suitcase-sized device, and our biggest challenge is mass and volume on Orion going to the moon. And so we had to reduce the size of a galley. We would love to fly a galley, but we just can't because of the mass and volume challenge. So we have a suitcase that basically the crew inserts their food into the suitcase. It's a warming plate and heats it up to about 155 degrees.
Oh my goodness, that's much warmer than I expected you to say. That's really impressive.
It's what they use for doing the hot drinks, warming up the food that needs to be warmed up so that it tastes better when it's warmer. So they can put about 12 packages in there to be able to heat up those and be able to have some hot food during the flight.
I'm impressed. I used to be a taste tester here, and so I always enjoyed trying the food. I found it to be really good, and so
it is amazing what they can do.
Yes, it really is. So tell us more about the ECLAS system and how it's performed so far now, 3 days in.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I am extremely excited how it's performing right now, because it is actually better than our predictions, which is really great. The carbon dioxide removal system that we are flying for the first time on a human spacecraft, relying on it, this particular system has been outperforming what we thought it was going to do. It's been awesome. So really low levels, and the crew's so far been pretty complimentary of it.
That's incredible news. So you were talking a little bit about, the temperature and how this is the first flight with crew, and so everything you're doing is learning. So what is your team hoping to learn on this mission?
So the biggest thing we're doing, number one right now, as I mentioned earlier, was because it is a flight test and it's the first time we're doing it, we're learning how to tweak things, we have heaters and we have the systems like the CO2 system I mentioned earlier. We're learning how to balance all those things as we work with the crew, because each crew member is different metabolically. We have different met rates that the crews have as they're doing different exercises, like you saw them exercising earlier today. Versus when you're doing a meal, you're pretty calm, and therefore you have a very low metabolic rate. So those variables really change how we interact with the crew, with our system. And so that's really what we're learning today, is how our system interacts with the human.
Integrity. We need a few minutes. We'll call you when it's a good time.
Copy, sounds good. We'll wait for your call.
That call from the crew about performing a wastewater dump, we actually had great views earlier from inside the cabin while they did so. It was fascinating. Talking about, preparing for the future, but we've also had similar hardware on the space station for the past 25 years. So what are some differences in the hardware that we have now on Orion and versus what, we have on the International Space Station?
Yeah, our biggest difference between Orion, because we are a deep space vehicle, you have that very long return, and there's no coming back until when you do that translunar injection burn that we did yesterday. And so it's going to be many days before we can actually get back. So when we designed Orion, we really looked at the ecosystem to try to figure out how can we make it simpler. And then some of the systems that we have, as I mentioned, the CO2 removal system that we have, we needed a regenerable system such that you weren't flying consumables that you had to use up every day and replace. That's a lot of things. I think I calculated one time, it's about 143 basketballs worth of lithium hydroxide canisters we would need to do a 21-day mission with Orion versus our current system, which takes about 16, volume about 16 basketballs to be able to go do that. And so it's a regenerable system. It essentially removes the carbon dioxide from the cabin air, dumps it overboard, and those items are recyclable every time you expose them to vacuum. They regenerate, and now you can expose it back to the cabin air again and remove more CO2. So it's those regenerable type systems. We flew some test examples of this on ISS to see how that went, but this is the first time we're actually flying with this type of system on a human spacecraft and completely relying on it.
Wow, amazing. And we've also heard some calls about the anomaly gas analyzer and taking those readings and the calls down from the crew about what they have gas-wise in the cabin. So how does your team take that data and interpret it?
So the biggest thing we have is certain limits on CO2 levels that we try to maintain without getting too specific, but I will. It's 4 millimeters of mercury is the level that we rely on. And basically we use those AGA measurements to basically bounce against that level that we're at. And so I believe, if I remember correctly, it's about 0.4 millimeters here on the ground that we're normally breathing. And so we try to stay as low as possible with carbon dioxide in the cabin. So, and the readings that we're seeing right now are actually kind of phenomenal for a human spacecraft. So it's great.
Wow, that is great. Well, congratulations to you and your team on a great mission so far, and we will be keeping an eye on everything as we move forward. But Paul, thank you again for joining us here.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's been a great flight so far.
Houston Integrity, you are go for Blizzard.
Copy, go for Blizzard. Christina, while I've got you and the crew, I have some information regarding a replan for the afternoon. Shouldn't require too much back and forth, but let me know. First is, we don't have any other vehicle statuses from what we've already told you. So unless you guys have questions for us, we were going to go ahead and cancel the flight director crew conference that's in 10 minutes. We also are going to do a little bit of a replan with you guys managing the afternoon post-midday meal, basically after the PAO event. We'd like to give you a bit more time for exercise and sliding back that S-band SAT mode DFTO a little bit. And then exercise after that. This means that you'll have to manage some of that pre-lunar flyby cabin config and other activities just amongst yourselves. But this should allow us to get in all exercise and have enough time post-PAO event for that S-band SAT mode DFTO. The DSN EMERCOM DFTO needs to stay where it is because there's some vehicle maneuvers that have to happen with that.
Hey, Chris, let me just make sure. Are you saying we can defer the S-band SAT mode DFTO, but do the DSN emercom on time? And Chris, if it helps you, Victor and I have both exercised, so he is more than happy to do the S-band SAT mode DFTO on time.
Thanks, Reed. Just talking down here with the team to make sure I got the right words to give you. We'd like that S-band SAT mode DFTO to slide 30 minutes to the right for some ground config. But then the emercom DFTO will stay where it is.
Okay, that sounds good. Ike will be ready 30 late for S-band SAT mode, but if you could also please give us a heads up when your commanding is done and you're ready for that activity, that would help us out.
Absolutely, Wilco. The other thing we want to remind you is that in your midday meal, we have about a 1-hour forward DSN LOS, but for most of that, we've got return. And kind of in the middle of your midday meal period, you'll notice there's, like I mentioned, this good Earth and Moon viewing positions. It's also roughly when you're going to pass close to the halfway point between the Earth and the Moon, and you can reference your altitude on the PFD for that midway point.
Yeah, crazy that we're seeing 105,205 miles, and it's still going up pretty quick. Thanks for all that, Chris.
Great. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy your lunch.
Those calls from Capcom, capsule communicator Chris Birch, also a NASA astronaut here in Mission Control Houston, up to the crew aboard Orion, named Integrity. This view of Artemis Mission Control, the Orbit 1 team still on console. The crew was enjoying their midday meal. We do not have fresh foods flying on Artemis 2. Orion does not have refrigeration or a late load capability prior to launch that we need for fresh foods. So we have shelf-stable foods aboard Orion and rehydratable foods that the crew is used to, having flown on the International Space Station. As we saw in the earlier video, the Artemis 2 crew had direct input into the food that they have available during the flight. They were able to sample and rate all of the foods on the menu, and their preferences were balanced with the nutritional requirements needed and what Orion can accommodate. Back with those live views of the Artemis 2 crew. We just spoke with Paul Boehm, Orion Crew Support and Thermal Systems Manager, telling us a little bit more about the food warmer on Orion. So if the crew needed to heat up any of the foods that they are eating today, they were able to do so with a approximately briefcase-sized food warmer to heat the meals as needed.
Integrity Houston, sorry to interrupt your lunch, but we have a commanding request prior to CPR demo during the forward LOS. Let me know when you're ready.
Go ahead, Chris.
All right, because you'll be starting the CPR demo activity while we're in that LOS, we would like you to first confirm we are in Coast to Default 4100, and then please put all 4 saws into Safe Harbor A, then start the CPR demo. I'll copy.
Okay, Chris, before starting CPR demo, we will verify Coast Default 4100, and we will command all 4 saws to Safe Harbor A.
Good readback. Thanks so much. Integrity courtesy call, not knowing your preference. We did have video of Victor, which we have stopped going out on our PAO stream.
We appreciate that, Chris. We were definitely good with it going out, but we also understand if you want to restrict, no problem either way.
Okay. Abiel, I will update our now growing crew preferences sheet. Thank you.
Back with views aboard Orion as the crew continues their midday meal. NASA astronaut Victor Glover having completed his exercise. Cleaning up in space. Obviously, we do not have showers aboard the Orion spacecraft. This is Artemis Mission Control here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Getting a live look inside the Orion spacecraft. They are still...
Integrity, toilet will be available throughout the LOS.
The crew is timelined in their midday meal right now. Obviously, they have mostly finished eating, but the ground teams also let them know they should have some great views of the moon and the Earth outside of their windows should they choose to take pictures. At this time. As we saw earlier, there are also timelined wastewater dumps from Orion, and during that time, the crew is instructed to not use the toilet. So the crew is about to go into an LOS, loss of signal, while they're on the Deep Space Network, and the ground teams here, we're calling to let them know that there will be no wastewater dumps scheduled during that time, so they'll be able to use the toilet as they need. this view outside the Orion spacecraft, you can see those solar arrays positioning. And a reminder, you can keep up with where Orion is at any time by visiting nasa.gov/track Artemis. Currently, the spacecraft is 122,500 miles away from Earth and 146,000 miles away from the moon. Up next on the Artemis II crew's timeline today will be the CPR demo. Ground teams have requested that as the crew conducts this demonstration with choking and CPR responses in the cabin, that they configure one of the cameras for recording. They'll be able to use the footage captured for this for future training use. We are 2 days, 1 hour, 3 minutes into the flight of Artemis 2, the first flight of crew aboard Orion. Spacecraft now 123,000 miles away from Earth. You're getting a live look inside the capsule as our 4 crew members, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Jeremy Hansen, and Christina Cook, are wrapping up their midday meal, getting the opportunity to take photos out the window of Earth and the Moon. We are in an LOS period, loss of signal from the ground side. This was tracked and communicated to the crew. However, we do receive communications from the crew members. Obviously, we have their live video right now. Inside Orion, you see they have dimmed the cabin lights. They have this option to allow them to get better views outside the window so there aren't any reflections from that lighting onto the windows. Being that we are 123 miles away from Earth and that distance continuing to grow, we are 145,000 miles away from the moon, and I think I previously said 123 miles from Earth. That's 123,000. So we are getting closer to that halfway point between the Earth and the moon. We look forward to the opportunity to share some of these pictures that they are taking today, along with everything else during the mission. We did receive some beautiful images this morning from the crew as they departed Earth after the translunar injection burn yesterday. You can follow NASA on social media at NASA or at NASA Artemis to see these pictures as we receive them. This is Artemis Mission Control. Clearly, what you have on your screen is a visualization. We are in a loss of signal with the Artemis 2 crew and the Orion spacecraft. This was a tracked LOS while we are on the Deep Space Network. We expect to regain communications shortly. In the meantime, the crew using some of their lunch break to photograph Earth and the moon outside of the cabin windows.